All right, now this is my NAS. This is, I'm using ZFS and Ubuntu Linux to run this NAS. This is an old beat up case. I've had this since 2010 and right now it's the year 2020. It's getting near the end of 2020. We're almost in November. And yeah, so this is an old beat up case that can fit a pretty good number of hard drives in it. And this is what I'm using for my ZFS Ubuntu based NAS. And today we're gonna, it's a little bit dusty inside, so we might blow some of the dust out with this tool right here. I did a separate video demoing this Hurricane canless air system tool. But the big thing we want to do is apply some new thermal compound. So I got some Arctic MX4 thermal compound, and wow, the lighting is causing too much of a reflection, but I have two cases of this. I'm probably going to use this one first. So this is my primary NAS, and my backup, I'm going to do my backup NAS also. They both have the same problem. So the heat sink has come loose from the CPU, so I'm going to need to re-secure the heat sink, but I'm going to have to redo the thermal compound first. So I'm probably going to do this whole video without any other voice in it for a good portion of the video. So I'm just going to like put music in the background or something. But so I'm just, you know, telling everybody what I'm doing ahead of time, just so you know what's going on. But there's no need for a whole lot of commentary. I'll probably talk about what I'm doing when I actually apply the thermal compound, and I think I'm going to talk about some of the disks inside. So I'm going to open this up and we're going to take a look at what's inside before we start getting down to work. All right, so this is the inside, and as you can see, there's kind of a rat's nest of cables down there, which is pretty messed up. I'd like to kind of get that cleaned up a bit. Unfortunately, this is not a modular power supply that I have in here, and it wasn't that common back. It wasn't that common back when I first built this, but anyways, so yeah, tons of big rat's nest, big mess of cables in there. But I actually have 9 hard drives in here, so 8 of them are in a ZFS RAID 10 array, and one of them is for the hard drive. So the hard drive is not, one of them is for the OS, so that hard drive is not redundant. So if that dies, I need to reinstall the OS, but my array should still be totally fine. So this is a big mess, but I'm gonna zoom in and get a closer look. All right, so let's get in here and take a closer look. So I have a bunch of hard drives down here, all lined up, all stacked up there. And then up here, I have a bracket, some brackets, and so let me see if I can move the light in here. Yeah, so this is kind of suboptimal lighting, but yeah, here goes. So there, you can see I have some brackets installed, and I installed 4 more hard drives up here on the top, where I guess this is intended for CD drives and stuff, and it's meant to be able to add brackets into, I guess. But yeah, so I have four drives on the top here, and you know, a whole bunch of them, 5 of them down here on the bottom. And you'll see like most of my SATA ports are used up, and there just aren't enough SATA ports on here for all the drives. So I actually installed this HBA. And I forget if this is an HP or a Dell HBA. It's been so long since I installed this. But this HBA, this is, let me try to set the light down. Yeah, that's not working. But yeah, see that cable coming out of there? That cable splits up like this, and that splits into a whole bunch of different SATA. Let's see how many times that splits. That's like, let's see, well, that's 4 SATA connectors. Yeah, that's just 4. So that gives me an additional 4 SATA connectors, and that's connected to this B socket, or rather the A socket on the HBA. And if I had another cable, or I might even have the cable around somewhere, there's another plug there where I could plug another one of these in. So this HBA can allow me to attach 8 disks to the system. So in addition to all those SATA ports on my system board, I can now plug in eight more hard drives into the system. So really I'm mostly just limited by the size of the case. And well, yeah, recording this, I'm actually realizing how incredibly messy and terrible that rat's nest of cables is down there. But anyways, yeah, the big problem with this system right now is my CPU right here. So yeah, that's the big heating issue with this, is the CPU being loose. And so we're gonna have to take that heat sink off and put some new thermal paste on it. So yeah, so that's that. I'll see if I can dig up the info on this HBA. And if you check the link in the description to my site, on the page, I'm gonna have some info about this HBA and where you can pick it up. I think it actually requires some firmware to be flashed onto it to so that it doesn't use RAID, and so that you have the option of creating just a JBOD, just a bunch of disks. That way you can use soft RAID like ZFS to manage your disks, which is, I think, is the right way to go. A lot of people like hardware-based RAID, but it's just not as flexible, and you're tied down to to that specific hardware, which is really terrible. And ZFS is just an amazing file system anyways. So yeah, so there's the heat sink issue, and just the overall messiness of these cables. So 2 issues with my NAS right now. But anyways, I am going to flip this case over on its side and start, I'm gonna start recording myself taking this out. I'm gonna clean this up with some alcohol, and I am going to put some new thermal paste on it and hopefully get my NAS up and running. One other issue I should mention that's come up with this NAS is sometimes one of these SATA cables comes loose, and I've had a disk disappear from my array, and it shows that it's in a degraded state. And I basically just go through and reseat all of these cables, and that fixes the issue. I'm actually not sure which one is loose or causing an issue, but the error message I was getting seems to point to that being the issue. I don't remember the message off the top of my head, but seems like that's it. So one thing that comes up with SATA drives is just loose cables, so that's something to watch out for. And I haven't pulled all these disks out and looked at the serial numbers to figure out which one it was. So I just reseated all of them to get it fixed quickly. But just thought I would mention that real quick. So I am going to switch over to the other segment of the video where I have this flipped over on its side for the thermal paste replacement right now. All right, so here is my CPU and my heatsink on my table here, and I'm gonna start cleaning these off. Now you can get special fluid that's intended specifically for cleaning off thermal paste, but I don't have that, and I don't think it's completely necessary. Ideally, you'd want to use 99% isopropyl alcohol. Now, 70% isopropyl alcohol is actually completely okay. Some people would disagree with that, but really it's completely okay, but it's just suboptimal. You're really better off with 99%, and if I had some on me right now, I would use it, but you're completely fine with 70%, and that's actually what we're gonna use today. So it will, I guess, take a little bit longer to dry, but it's no big deal. So we have 70% isopropyl alcohol, and which I have a lot of on hand due to you know, the things going on in 2020 and all of the, you know, everything we have to sanitize like all the time. We have plenty of this on hand. So I'm gonna zoom in here, and really you wanna use a cloth that is lint free. Like people have recommended like nail polish cleaning cloths and things like that. I don't have anything like that. All I have are these cotton swabs. So I'm gonna use these. These should be completely fine. And when we're done doing this, I'm gonna measure the temperature on the CPU in my NAS, and just to show how much lower the temperature is, which it pretty much has to be, even if this is a suboptimal application of thermal paste, which I don't think it is. It'll be completely fine. But even if that were the case, it's gonna be a huge improvement, because this was basically just sitting there loose, not providing any cooling at all whatsoever, or like almost none, if any at all. It was basically running without a heat sink, which is incredibly bad. So pretty much anything I do is going to be better than that. Like, I don't even know how this came loose. I guess it's been there so many years, it kind of makes sense that it would. I mean, I bought this system back in around 2010, 2011. I bought the parts for this and assembled this system, and at the time I was using this for something completely different. I believe this was my Windows desktop, and I had another box, like I was dual boxing it, running Windows on one and Linux on another. Since then, I have a whole nother Windows gaming machine, and I have my Linux desktop, I've repurposed this system board, CPU, and a power supply and case as a NAS, and just added a ton of hard drives in it, and now it's being used. I installed Ubuntu on it, and now it's working as my my NAS. I actually originally had, sorry, I'm getting a little bit off topic in this video where I'm supposed to be cleaning this, but basically I was originally running just regular Linux soft RAID, which is fine and great and everything, but it doesn't give you the same protection that ZFS does, and that was wrong of me. Looking back, I think that was a bad idea. I should have just gone with ZFS from the beginning. I actually think ButterFS or BtreeFS or whatever you want to call it is actually a good choice too. People say that generally you're going to run into more problems with that eventually when you run it, more so than ZFS. ZFS is more solid and a better choice, I think. Some people might disagree with that. I think BtreeFS, ButterFS, or whatever you want to call it, is going to have, I think it's supposed to have more advanced features, and is a pretty good choice, but it's just not the solid choice that ZFS is. Plus, I'm more familiar with ZFS, so it's easier for me to manage, because I'm coming from like a Solaris administration background way back, you know, a long time ago. So anyways, in more recent years, this thing was turned into a NAS. Started out with regular Linux soft RAID, and I've upgraded it, and I'm using ZFS now. So let's get down to cleaning this. So before I zoom in on that, let's just pour some alcohol in here. I like having a little dish with alcohol. And I'm gonna use this cotton swab to swab these off. And I'm gonna let them dry and apply thermal paste. And we'll talk about the optimal way to apply thermal paste. People have different ideas about that, but and I don't do this very often, so I'm not building systems all day. I only do it every now and then, so I'm not an expert at applying thermal paste, but basically just a pea-sized dot in the center I think is optimal. Some people like doing an X, some people do like a zigzag shape, whatever. I think really just a pea-sized shape in the center so it spreads out evenly is optimal. And you don't want to put too much thermal paste, you don't want to put too little. So pea-sized in the center is the way to go. But we'll get to that after we do this cleaning. So zoomed in on my CPU there. All right, so let's clean this thing off. And wow, that does seem to be on there pretty well. I mean, I guess it would be though. All right, so it has hardened on there. All right, so that's coming off nicely. even the shadows from my finger effect it's showing up on the video, at least on my screen, on the screen on my camcorder. I am using a camcorder rather than my cell phone today to record this video, but yeah, a lot of times the actual video when I watch it later comes out a whole lot better than what I see on the screen on my camcorder. Usually on my phone it doesn't. It's usually a pretty good representation of what I'm going to get. All right, so I actually kind of just want to wipe this off with the other end. I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. Let's see here. This should be completely fine. This is a bit of a mess. I only have 2 of these cotton swabs before I have to search for more. And I still have the heat sink to clean off. And what else? I also have my backup NAS. So right now I'm doing the CPU for my primary NAS, and my backup NAS needs the same thing. My backup NAS was actually my old. I had built an Ethereum mining rig back in 2017, and I repurposed that hardware as a backup NAS because I stopped mining Ethereum for different reasons. And I had originally planned on putting six GPUs in it, but I only ended up using 1 as just a test to see if I could even get the thing mining. And I never ended up upgrading it to 6, and I eventually scrapped the project and turned it into a backup NAS because I needed a backup NAS and I wasn't mining anymore. Anyways, all right, so that's mostly pretty clean. I'd like to wipe that off with a clean cotton swab. I feel like I should probably, I'm going through these cotton swabs faster than I thought I would, but I'm gonna rub this off with a little bit more alcohol here, or a whole lot more alcohol. And I just don't feel good about how that's, I feel like that's not coming clean enough. And I really kind of wish I did have a little, like a lint-free cloth or something. But I think this is going to be okay. So yeah, I would recommend getting a cloth specifically for this and not using cotton swabs. But look at that, it's drying right off. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but that's drying right off. So you can see that drying right there as I stop touching it. I think I'm gonna wipe this off with another cloth afterwards. You don't need to do this stuff here. I mean, strictly speaking, I don't need this stuff on the edges here, but I don't need to clean this off on the edges, but I feel like I really want, like, I don't want it to be dirty. But the important thing is the surface of the CPU itself. So I'm going to use a completely dry end to wipe this off, because I feel like I'm getting actual residue on this. And I'm going to need to, make sure this is as clean as possible. And I'm probably spending more time on this than I should. And there we go. So I am going to move on to the heat sink now. So let's zoom out real quick and then zoom back in here, just to get a view of what we are working on. And this looks like it's coming clean a whole lot easier. All right, so I was able to luckily get a hold of a few more cotton swabs here. So that is very fortunate. So yeah, I guess the trick with this is just to go overboard with rubbing alcohol and just make sure that you get everything cleaned off, and then just make sure there's no residue left over, which there can be. I'm actually, I guess you can't see, I should be paying attention to what's on screen, but I'm trying to, I got a little bit in the edges of this. It's not going to affect anything. I just don't like it being dirty. But all right, so this is pretty clean here. Mostly just, wiping this off a lot and using lots of alcohol just to wipe all the debris and everything away. And actually, amazingly, I just got 3 more cotton swabs, and I don't think I'm going to even actually absolutely need them. So I'm going to use 1 more with some alcohol just to make sure I have this clean, just to use one that's completely clean, just to get the whole thing cleaned up a bit. Yeah, this will do the trick. And this copper part is the only part that actually touches the CPU itself. And you could see on the CPU there's a very vague light mark, the shape of this circle. So anyways, all right, so that's pretty good. I'm now gonna dry this off. So I'm just gonna use this to wipe away any residue, and then I'm gonna let it dry, and then I'm gonna wipe it again to make sure there's no, actually look at that, I can see it's drying as I wipe it. That's pretty good. So I don't know how residue free this is gonna be, but I feel like I wanna use a completely dry end and just, this looks a little bit, yeah, I think this is as good as it's gonna get. You can see there's scuffs or scratches. I can't imagine that's from what that's from, if that's from the cotton swab or what, but anyways, there we go. So I've got that cleaned off. And honestly, you're probably not supposed to rub the thermal paste into it. I don't know if that makes a difference. well, I don't know if you can see in the video. Yeah, you can. See, there's those little scuff marks. I'm guessing that comes from like rubbing the thermal paste on it to get it off. I guess there's no way, I don't know if there's a way to avoid that, but, and I don't think it's going to cause any negative issues. The thermal paste, the new thermal paste should go in and fill any cracks or, you know, imperfections on the surface to help heat transfer. So anyways, let's see here. Get that all cleaned up and polished and whatnot. Let's move the CPU back in here in just a sec. And 1 sec, I'm gonna get the CPU in here and wipe this down one more time. Oops. Get that on video. And yeah, just wiping this down one more time just to reduce the chances of anything on there. All right, and that's about it for this. So now I'm going to install this back into the system, and then I'm going to be putting the thermal paste on it, and then I'm going to be putting the heat sink back on. So that's going to be fun. I'm going to switch over to that right now. All right, so while I had this out, I actually I took the heat sink out, and I actually detached the fan from the heat sink. I don't know if you can tell at this camera angle, but look at all that dust on this fan, on those fan blades, and on not so much on the top here, but on the bottom, there's a crazy amount of dust that I'd practically never be able to reach. It's always a pain cleaning the CPU fan because you don't want to pull it off and mess up the, you know, the thermal paste. But since I'm taking the thermal paste off anyway, may as well take that fan off and clean this whole thing out. So I just brushed off on between the blades here. I use this old toothbrush to, you know, just brush out all the dust in the blades. I already brushed this off, but this is the heat sink. This is the top. This is the bottom that I just cleaned off just a little bit ago. And so top looks like this. So I just cleaned that up, and I am now going to, off camera, I'm going to clean this up, and then I'm gonna get things put back together and get the thermal paste on in just a minute. All right, so I'm gonna apply this thermal paste. I've got my CPU back in place, so I'm just gonna open this up. I wouldn't do this over my case, but I don't wanna move my camera just to open this thing up. All right, so it comes with this little tube like this, and I'm betting this is more than enough to do my, even though I have another thing of thermal paste, that this one comes in a box. This should be more than enough for this CPU and probably also for my my backup NAS, which I also have to do. This is the 2019 edition. I don't know what makes that different. Yeah, this is Arctic Silver, or just Arctic MX4 thermal compound. I've always called it Arctic Silver, but they don't actually have the word silver in there. I don't know if the silver was part of the brand name or a specific product that they made. But I haven't done this in years, so I'm gonna try to put a pea-sized spot of this. All right, so I just pulled this cap off. I'm gonna try to put a pea-sized spot right in the center. If it's not perfect, it's not the end of the world. It should be completely fine. Let's give this a shot. This is the first time doing this in years. I try to make sure this is on the camera's catching this pretty well. And try to only get, okay, that didn't come out pea-shaped. That's about pea-sized. I feel like I should be putting more on there, but yeah, no more. That's more than enough. All right, so there we go. That is probably, if anything, I could swear that's like slightly too much. That's like a really fat pea, maybe like a blueberry size. That's ever so slightly more than pea sized, but that's fine. So now we're going to put the heatsink and fan back on. I got to remember to plug the fan in. So I think plugging the fan in was an important thing. Yeah, I'm going to orient this based on how I'm plugging the fan. Gets plugged in right here. You can kind of see on the video. It's this thing down here that you can barely see. But yeah, I'm orienting this based on where the fan is. So I'm going to lower this down. I'm going to try to have this centered as much as possible. This is always like the tricky part. All right, so I got that seated in there properly. Let's just attach this in. All right, it wasn't that tricky. I just didn't have it aligned properly. And there we go. We're all set. We pretty much replaced the thermal paste on the CPU. Now I'm just going to fire this up and check the temperatures. Yeah, the thermal paste I don't think was distributed properly. I don't think that was optimal, but this should work pretty well. I hate how this kind of feels like it wobbles. I always hated how these are connected, but yeah, that should be fine for now. So that should pretty much be it. I think I remember. The latest system I built was using an all-in-one liquid cooling system, and I remember it being a whole lot easier to connect to it than this. This is just the stock fan and stock heatsink, which I think they're supposed to be more of a pain. Also, this is really old, so any newer system is probably going to be a bit different. But anyways, so that's that. Next clip you're going to see is me checking the temperatures on my system. Alright, so on the left you can see an old terminal that was open before I disconnected from my NAS and replaced the thermal paste. So this one's, the connection to my NAS was disconnected, but you can still see the output there on the screen showing the temperature is a whole lot higher than it is now. So on the right you can see I've reconnected to my NAS afterwards and after replacing the thermal paste, and you can see those numbers look a whole lot better. It's way cooler than it was before. So that's basically a before and after picture showing the results from replacing the thermal paste and actually having my CPU secured onto the heatsink. So yeah, like and subscribe, leave a comment down below, hit the little bell icon, and as always, hopefully you enjoyed watching. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today. Thanks, guys. Also, almost forgot, I'm going to be doing basically this same video, but for my backup NAS, which is configured a little bit differently. But if you want to see me clean that up and do a little bit of work on that and replace the thermal paste on that one as well, you're going to want to keep a lookout for that video. I'm going to be publishing that one pretty soon too. You might want to definitely think about subscribing and hitting the little bell icon just so you get an alert when that video does come out.